I want to tell you about a moment that happened in my kitchen. My son was maybe 19. He was having a hard day, the kind where everything is too loud and too close and too much. And he went to the couch, turned on the Nintendo Switch, and started playing his Zelda game to get away from it all. One of our dogs came around the corner. He wasn't being dramatic about it. He just walked over slowly, jumped up the couch, and lay down beside him. Not touching, just beside. He didn't look at him. They just stayed there together. Two nervous systems that had learned, somehow, to be near each other without it costing anything. I stood there, just staring at them, and I didn't say a word, because I understood in that moment that what I was watching had taken years. It hadn't been easy. There had been a lot of wrong turns before we got here, and nobody, not one person, in the dog training or the family dog mediation world or the autism parenting world had ever prepared me for what it would actually take. That's why I'm making this show. This is Under the Same Roof, a narrated essay series about what nobody tells you when you share a home with a reactive dog and a neurodivergent family. Not the heartwarming version, the real one. I'm Jennyfer Tan. I'm a certified family dog mediator based in Vancouver, BC. I'm also the parent of a twice exceptional young adult with autism and ADHD. In my household, 2 dogs, 1 autistic son, 1 neurotypical daughter, a husband, and the daily reality of multiple nervous systems navigating each other, and a city that wasn't designed for any of them. These essays explore the intersection that the dog trainer and family dog mediation world and the neurodivergent parenting world have both, somehow, missed. What is a reactive dog actually experiencing inside a household with an autistic teenager? What happens when your child can't read your dog's stress signals and your dog can't leave the room? How do you protect your dog's welfare when you're already at capacity managing everything else? What does urban living actually cost? A reactive dog, the noise, the density, the unpredictability of city streets. And what does that same environment cost a neurodivergent family trying to hold it all together? And what does it mean when the bond you hoped for finally arrives, just not in the way you expected? This show is rooted in the L.E.G.S. model of applied ethology and family dog mediation and grounded in the kind of lived experience that no certification can replace. It's for families navigating autism, ADHD, sensory processing differences, and reactive or anxious dogs in the real world. Apartment buildings, busy streets, small spaces, and all. And for anyone who has ever stood in the middle of their household, wondering who to help first. Understanding before strategies, always. So, let's start here. For a long time, I kept 2 parts of my life very separate. There was my work, the dogs, the families I talked to, who were exhausted and confused and had usually tried everything before they called me. And then there was my home, my son, his diagnosis, the years of figuring out what he needed and how to give it to him and how to keep the rest of the household from falling apart in the meantime. I try not to talk about my son with my clients. I try to leave my work at my desk and not discuss it at the kitchen table. They were different worlds, and I kept them that way. Until I couldn't anymore. Let me ask you something. How many times have you heard someone say, about a dog or about a child, they know better. They're just being stubborn. I heard it about my son constantly in the early years. He's so smart, but he just won't follow directions. He won't transition. He won't do anything that isn't his idea. He's choosing this. And in my work with dogs, I hear it almost every single time. My dog knows how to sit. He's just choosing not to. She knows this is wrong. She's doing it on purpose. Both of those things feel true from the outside. Neither of them is. My son wasn't choosing to shut down during a fire drill. He wasn't selecting defiance from a menu of options. His nervous system was overwhelmed, and it responded the only way it knew how. The capacity to comply wasn't there, even when the knowledge was. Your dog isn't choosing to lunge at other dogs on leash, not in the way we mean when we use the word choosing. They are responding to what their nervous system is telling them as fast as it can tell them, which is faster than any conscious decision could travel. We know in dog training and family dog mediation that learning is context dependent. A dog who sits beautifully in your living room may completely fall apart at the end of your street. The behavior is there. The capacity to access it under pressure is not. My son could explain complex scientific concepts at 10 years old. He could hyper-focus on a subject for 6 hours straight, and he could not, for years, handle the sound of the smoke detector without complete dysregulation. Not because he hadn't learned, because learning and access to that learning are two entirely different things. Once I understood that, in both worlds, everything changed. We stopped pushing harder and started scaffolding smarter, smaller steps, more support at the edges, setting up for success instead of waiting for failure to confirm what we already feared. The second thing I had to learn was about environment. Every trainer knows that environment is often the hidden variable. Change the environment, and you can change the behavior entirely. It's not magic. It's just that we spent all our time trying to change the individual, and the individual was responding perfectly rationally to conditions we never thought to question. In our home, this took years to figure out. We kept trying to help my son adapt to environments that were genuinely not built for him. Loud restaurants, crowded malls, schools that ran on fluorescent lights and bells, and 30 kids in a room, with no acoustic management whatsoever. And when he struggled, we tried harder. We coached more. We expected more. It didn't work, because the environment was the problem, and we weren't changing the environment. When we finally started designing around what he actually needed, noise-canceling headphones, predictable transitions, permission to exit before he hit the wall, quiet space to decompress without it being treated as failure, things shifted. Not because he'd changed, because we'd stopped asking him to function without the conditions that made functioning possible. People judged us for it. I want to say that plainly, because I think a lot of families sit with that judgment alone and assume it means they're doing something wrong. The same way dog families get told they're coddling their dog or making excuses, or that management is somehow a failure of the relationship. Management is real. Accommodation is real. Meeting someone where they are is not giving up. It is giving them the foundation from which growth actually becomes possible. A noise-phobic dog is not broken for needing a safe room during a thunderstorm. A child with sensory sensitivities is not failing for needing to leave even before the school assembly ends. These are appropriate responses to genuine overwhelm. The question is whether we help them, or whether we keep expecting them to white-knuckle through it and then wonder why things keep getting worse. Third, genetics. Or more precisely, what we come into the world already carrying. In family dog mediation, we talk about this constantly. A border collie isn't being difficult when they try to herd your children. They are being a border collie. A dog with a high anxiety genetic baseline is not being dramatic. They are living in a body that was built to scan for threat, and they are very, very good at it. We don't usually tell the border collie to just relax. We ask ourselves whether we've given them an outlet for what they were built to do. We ask whether our expectations match who this dog actually is. ADHD is not a discipline problem. Autism is not a character flaw. My son's need for routine, his hyper-focus, his inflexibility under stress, These are not things he is doing to me or to himself. They are features of how his brain is wired, and for a long time I treated them like bugs to be fixed, which meant I was constantly working against him instead of with him. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to make him fit a template and started asking what he actually needed to function, what his strengths were, where he was already doing something remarkable that I kept missing because I was so focused on what wasn't working. We still had goals. We still worked toward growth, but we did it from a foundation of who he actually was, not who I had assumed he was supposed to become. That's the same shift I ask families to make when I work with them. Not lower your expectations. Locate them correctly. And that brings me to the fourth piece, the individual. There is no such thing as a generic autistic child. There is no such thing as a generic reactive dog. The diagnoses describe patterns, not people. The breed describes tendencies, not this particular dog, living in this particular home, carrying this particular history. For years, I compared my son to a version of a child that existed mostly in my own expectations. I compared him to his sister, to his peers, to what I had imagined parenting would look like. And every comparison made both of us worse off, because it kept pulling my attention away from who he actually was and toward the gap between him and something he was never going to be. I help families with this too. The reactive rescue who can't be what the family imagined when they saw the photo. The dog who will probably always need more management than the neighbor's dog. The family who has to accept that the hike they wanted, the off-leash life they pictured, may need to look different from what they planned. That grief is real. I don't want to skip past it, because there is something genuinely hard about letting go of what you thought this was going to be. But on the other side of that grief is the actual relationship, the one that's available, the one that, in my experience, is almost always richer and stranger and more specific than anything you could have planned for. Here is the thread that runs through all of it. For a long time, in both roles, I was oriented toward compliance, toward getting the right behavior at the right time in the right context, toward managing the household, toward making things work. And things worked, more or less, but they didn't feel like much. The shift happened in both worlds when I stopped asking, why won't you just do what I'm asking? And started asking, what are you trying to tell me? That is not a small shift. It changes everything about how you move through a hard moment. It changes what you're looking for. It changes what counts as information. I want to be honest about something here, because I think these stories usually skip this part. I still lose my patience. I still have days where I catch myself expecting neurotypical responses from a neurodivergent brain, or expecting a reactive dog to perform. Like a dog who isn't carrying what he's carrying. I still get tired. I still slip. Those moments are not evidence that I've failed. They're information about where I am, what I'm carrying, what I need. The same framework I apply to my son and my dogs, I have had to learn to apply to myself. When I notice I'm slipping, I try to take a breath and come back to the reason I'm doing this differently. Because my son deserves to be understood as he actually is. Because my dogs deserve the same. And because the version of me that just tries to manage everything into compliance is not the version that gets to have a real relationship with any of them. My son is a young adult now. He advocates for his own needs clearly and without apology. He has built relationships that are genuine and mutual. He has developed strategies that work with his brain, not against it. He is, by almost any measure, thriving. And one of my dogs still lies down beside him when he needs it. Not touching, just beside. The bond I hoped for arrived. It just didn't look like anything I had originally imagined. That is the story I want to spend this show telling. Not the version where everything works out, because someone tried hard enough, or loved enough, or found the right technique. The version where understanding came first, where the relationship was built on actually seeing who was in front of us. Whether you're here because of the dog, or because of the child, or because you're standing in the middle of your household, wondering who to help first, this show is for you. Next episode, we're going to talk about the difference between drilling commands and teaching skills that actually stick. Why your dog can be calm in the living room and fall apart completely on the sidewalk. Why that's not failure, and it's not stubbornness. And what it looks like to teach a nervous dog how to think through his big feelings, instead of just waiting to be told what to do. I'm Jennyfer Tan. This is Under the Same Roof. Understanding before strategies, always.